Hey y'all, this is Cindy Emmy, and today I'm going to be doing a requested video on my beading pattern organization method. I don't really know if I should call it a method or not. It's just, really what I've been doing and what I plan to do with it. A little background on this whole deal is I only started organizing this way a little over a month and a half ago. I'm still tweaking things. I'm a little OCD about certain things, and I've finally gotten to the point that I feel like I can share. There's still some things I'm not 100% with, but we'll just take it as they come. This is a 5-inch binder. I was originally in a 2-inch, and then I moved it to a 3-inch. And then I finally had to go with, instead of just going straight to a 4-inch, I went with a 5-inch so that I could last longer. I'm going to link this one below because not only do I like it, but as an added bonus, which I didn't know when I ordered it, was that it comes in a pack of 2 for half the price of like most ones that you get in one. Now the opening and closures are not the easy closure ones that I normally like, but I do quite like this. I measured the other day and I only actually have like 2.5 inches left in this binder. And I just moved into it literally a few days ago. I can totally see the need in like the next 6 months to a year, needing to split up my organization into 2 separate binders. I also use 2 types of Post-its, a regular size Post-it and a index card size Post-it. I use these for multiple different things, but mainly for beads. But I'll explain that later. I use Avery Ultra tabs and lots of printer paper and lots of loose leaf paper. And recently, one of the things that I'm not going to be showing is that I've been trying to add, like these pictures right here, I've been trying to add a little one to the little info sheet behind each pattern. But the first method I didn't work out so well, and I'm trying a second method, but I need a lot of pictures before I can do that method. So, yeah, I'll explain more about that later, but I only actually started doing that like yesterday or the day before, so I will only be mentioning it, not showing it. I originally had no organization method when it came to organizing and storing patterns that I purchased. I started in college. I bought patterns here and there with the plans to figure out how to make some of the things that I'd seen my friends making. And by friends, I mean one friend. This started all the way back in 2010 when I was a freshman. And while I think Pinterest was a thing then, from what I can remember, most of my friends didn't really start using it until later on. I think it was either that or Google Hangout that you like had to have permission to use or something like that. But they didn't really use it very much. I don't really remember my friends using it a ton until like 2012-ish. They used it, but not to the extent that like when I left film school in 2016, where by the end of that I had like Pinterest boards for like all my thesis films and all the mini films I did and all this stuff. So I was really into Pinterest then. I haven't actually used it much since. So back then when I would see my friends making these things, there was nowhere that they or myself, who I really had no clue what they were actually doing, didn't know it was bead weaving or what it was called or anything. I just knew I wanted to do it at some point. There was nowhere that they could get a lot of free patterns like you can on Pinterest today, which, by the way, you should take all of those with a grain of salt because a lot of them are stolen. So I tend not to use any free patterns on there anymore, but I'm not telling people what they should or should not do. But back then too, I had nowhere but my computer to collect patterns I'd purchased here and there randomly when the mood struck me. Also, I never did anything with the few of patterns that I had because I didn't know how to bead, and I, to be honest, had no clue what it was. Um, I just, would get them with the interest of learning how to do it, and things happen. And also because I was in college at the time, it did not lend itself to a lot of free time or space on my computer. Like when you're in film school, like you use a lot of the space on your computer. Uh, so things got moved around from flash drive to external hard drive to external hard drive. So that when I finally was convinced by a friend of mine to actually learn to bead weave, I had completely lost track of almost all of the patterns I had gotten over the years. And once I learned to actually bead and fell in love with it, I knew I had to figure out some sort of organization method. Um, at the time, I had been using Microsoft OneTrack to keep track of my knitting and crochet patterns. Um, and I decided to do the same with my beading patterns. Very quickly, my online beading pattern notebook on Microsoft OneNote got stuffed with extremely organized patterns, and it worked until a few years ago. Um, if I wanted to bead something, say for Christmas, um, I would have to go and click on holiday and then click on season and then click on Christmas. Um, and it didn't really work. If I wanted to, if someone wanted something specific, like say a dog, I have to go to the dog section, and the dog section actually is one of the big reasons why I changed my method. Um, One of the big differences between my online beading organization and my knitting and crochet organization is that for knitting and crochet, I have a separate kind of backup thing called Ravelry, if anyone's a knitter or crocheter. On there, any pattern that I buy, and you can buy thousands, goes into my library, and I can access it at any time. I can search through it for, like, if I have a random mood and just want to like look up seashell, and I can find patterns that I own or patterns that people have that have seashells in them. Um, I also have a queue feature on there so that like I forget things like patterns that I have and stuff on there too. But like I have a queue so I can just look through my queue anytime and find, something that I put in there that I was interested in. So there are things that I'm interested in that are on there. I don't have this with beading. I also have, they have, you can track your projects and put like your hook size, your needle size, what yarn you use. There's a notes section that like you can put all of like any adjustments you made to the pattern if you like had to go down some stitches or go up some stitches or just anything with the pattern. There was a section you can write it, and it was cataloged online. Um, when I started beading, I did not have this. So when I would see a new pattern and that I wanted, I would buy it and place it in my online notebook, planning to bead it, and then I would see another one or get a new Japanese book, and the cycle would repeat. Of the patterns that are on my online notebook, I am pretty sure that I have beaded maybe 10 to 20% of them. Subconsciously, I knew that this was going on, but I would just get so excited about a new method of doing something or a whole new way of beading that everything before it would just move to the back of my mind and I would completely forget about it. And I'm not even mentioning the patterns that I got and then did not feel like organizing at the moment. So they stayed in the downloads folder of my laptop. And then when my memory got too full, I would move them to an external hard drive or a flash drive, and only recently have I been finding those too. Um, I can't type a random word into a database and see all of the beading patterns that I have that I bought that correspond to a certain word. I can't just go and look at a bunch of pictures of the patterns that I have and a cool picture and just want to be that. I have to literally be thinking about something and looking for it to find it. I can't see anything extra besides what I click on. So like if I'm looking at, say, Goofy here, I don't see any of these. Like I have to literally be looking for these to see them. And sometimes, people like to go and just randomly flip through things to figure out what they want to do. I would love if someone would create something like Ravelry for beading or other crafts. I know you can also do weaving on there, but they don't sell weaving patterns, I don't think. If there was a place where like beading designers see pictures of what people had done, things people had changed, that would be really cool. How someone hasn't either expanded Ravelry to other crafts or created something like it astounds me. If I had the money or the coding skills, I would make it myself, but I have neither. So I lose patterns and don't make most of what I have. I have beaded patterns for my shop, a couple that are on this thing right here, that when they sold out and I went to remake them, not only was I not able to find the PDF of them again, but in some instances, the only thing I had was the picture, because most of the cases I had like one of the beadings left, because that's usually when I remake them, is when I have like one left. But there were a couple times where I sold out completely and all I had would be like one of these pictures. That's actually not one of any of these, but it's just like, it's really stressful if you can't find what you're looking for and you purchased it. And you purchased it, but you feel really awkward going to the beading designer and being like, hey, I purchased this back in like 2013 and I beaded it like when I first started, and now I can't find the pattern, no idea where it went. So it's just that's really awkward. And half the time I don't think they'll believe me. I have this weird sense of like no one's gonna believe me when I say something. I don't know why. It's just a weird thing that I have. Like even if I'm telling 100% the truth, I don't think anyone's ever gonna believe me. So I just don't like tell anyone. Like there's been a couple times that Amazon sent me like it wasn't the exact thing I wanted, and I felt so guilty, like even thinking about contacting Amazon. If they didn't send it to me at all and I didn't get it, I have no problem saying that. But for some reason, if they did send me something but it wasn't exactly correct, I feel really guilty about like complaining or trying to send something back, because I'm like, they won't believe me. They'll think I'm just trying to get something free. Ignore that rant. I don't know why. So like that, actually the whole finding like that I don't have something or only have one of it is again what happened with this whole thing. Was I went to go beat a dog stitch marker for someone, and when I was looking for the specific dog, I couldn't find it. At the time, all of my dog patterns, instead of being as organized as they are now, they were just kind of a notebook, and I just had them all in one thing. Like there wasn't even any organization to that, because usually when I first started getting dog patterns, I would just bead them right as I was getting them. But then like over time, my people's interest in my knit group and stuff went off of dogs, and I started beading other things, but I still was getting dog patterns because people still liked them. But I just never beaded them, so I just kept putting them in that list. And I just like, while I was, it was a Cocker Spaniel pattern that I had beaded that I'm pretty sure is by Jane of Bead Crumbs. I apologize if I'm getting her name wrong. I've never actually personally spoken to her, so with names, sometimes the easiest looking names can be wrong. I know that personally from a friend of mine who I love to death, but the spelling of her name is nowhere close to how she pronounces it. So I apologize if that's wrong, but I'm pretty sure that it's one of her patterns, and it's like, I think, a Cocker Spaniel. And while I was searching for the Cocker Spaniel, I found many patterns for dogs that I had forgotten I even bought. And to this day, I'm still finding patterns that are just stashed random places. And I have found duplicates of patterns, so that I bought one pattern one year and bought it again another year. But I physically could not find the dog. Like, I went and organized them by, I don't know if really species is the correct word. I found many. I have like 3 or 4 Cocker Spaniel patterns. They're not the pattern that my friend wanted, that I had originally made for a friend of hers, like, when I first got the pattern. So, like, this ended up happening. So, I decided not to store my pattern, well, okay, I store my patterns digitally, but I wanted to have them physically as well, so that, like, if I find out that I've lost them, I can just go and scan the pattern that I know I have and, still have it. I actually do that with my Japanese books. I scan them all and put them into my computer, so that if something happens, that I still have my Japanese beading books. This pocket at the moment, it actually has more in it than it usually does. This is where I put things that I have not decided on when I will bead them, or if I'm playing around with designs. I rarely design my own beading patterns. I have a couple, but unlike knitting patterns, for some reason beading patterns make my brain hurt. But like, a friend of mine asked for me to design some Hello Kitty earrings, or I should say Hello Kitty inspired earrings, because I found out that you cannot put the word Hello Kitty anywhere on your, like, on the title or anything, or they will take your item down. They probably will never see the light, besides if my friend decides to wear them. But I'm playing around with those. This here is my large table of contents. I took the sections that I had online, which were more general. So, like, I would have, like, these sections from 3 to 9 are all in one section online called Animals. And all of these are, like, seasons and stuff, like, and all the holidays are in the season ones. But I needed one. I wanted to kind of split them up and stuff, but also I needed 32. But inside each of these, there's also another table of contents, because, like I mentioned, cats and dogs. I have like hundreds of dogs. I actually really only have like 4 or 5 cats. I really need more cats. If there's a designer watching this and you have a good cat pattern, let me know, because I need more cats. Mainly because my mom likes them. Now, if I'm looking to bead something and I have beaded it before, I just look here and then go to one of these corresponding tabs. If I'm looking to bead something new, I go to my 2 bead sections, which right now is about 2 inches. And that's because I'm taking a month off from giant shop updates, where I have like 40 or 50 things, and going through all of the items on my Etsy shop and like putting them together and seeing what I have and what I don't have. And I'm going to be creating earring sets out of most of my charms, not all of them, most of them. So I'm like, some of them I'm rebeading, some of them I'm not, but I'm going through and taking photos of all of them, because some of my older photos when I first started look like crap. Specifically, I had a small $15 light box that came with a white backdrop, but when I took pictures on that white backdrop, it looked like I was using a paper towel. And it bothers the living daylights out of me, but like, again, my brain, like, I'll think I want to retake these photos, and then I'll see, ooh, look, this new beading pattern. Ooh, I want to bead that. I don't want to go back and, redo something I've already done. So I'm taking a month to do that, and so like I'm only putting patterns in here I have beaded recently. So any of the patterns that are on my Etsy shop, or the items that are on my Etsy shops that I have patterns for, well, I have patterns for all of them, but like, they're still online and not in here. Only the stuff I've beaded in the last month and a half are organized. I am slowly adding my old patterns in here, but I don't want to organize them until I have either rebeaded them again, or I have done all my due diligence with organizing them. So that they can be put into the organizer. So if I am planning to bead something new, I usually flip to one of these top tabs. See if you can see those top tabs, which are again the Avery tabs. I got a pack of 2 for like really cheap. And some of these are temporary, some of them are not. My first section is my Delica bead chart. I don't know how well you can see this. You can't really see it well in person because I couldn't find an actual good, I wanted to actually buy one. I just wanted a list of all of specifically size 11 Delica beads so that I knew, what they kind of looked like before I bought them or stuff. So this is all I could find. It's not the best group of pictures, but I wanted something to archive what different beads look like. It does not look very helpful to most people, but if I see on a pattern a number, but they give no name for it, which a lot of patterns do, this will give me a hint to what color it is, and then I can use, this. So if I'm trying to find a color and it's different in the chart than what I think it is, I can use this to kind of find something similar. For an example, this is a floral beading fringe. This is my mistake one. It was my practice one. I always do a practice one before I make the actual ones that I'm going to sell. If you hold it like this, it looks fine, but if you do it like this, it's got some gapping and it's missing some beads. This one, if you can see, which I should be putting a picture somewhere over here of these. They're these kind of browny gold colors. In the pattern, all it had was the code DB621 and was represented by a pink square. If I had been just starting out beading and did what I did in the beginning, which was just buy the colors that I saw and not worry trying to be exact or getting colors that were similar, I would have bought a random pink color instead of this tanny yellow color. Instead, I looked on here and found the color, which is all the way up here, which I'm pretty sure you can't see, and I'm not moving my camera because it's had a problem with moving itself recently. But it looks, okay, on here it looks more like a really bright gold that has hints of brown in it. It's kind of a champagne-y color in person. So I took a glance at this and I realized it was not supposed to be pink. This size Delica bead is actually, it's size 11, and it's DB621, and it's called Silver Lined Butterscotch. But that's just one way that I like having these charts to help me so that I can see just kind of a general overview of what beads that I need to work with or need to get. This next section, which is actually behind, was from a while ago, but I still kind of need some of these. is only like in the past couple weeks started to be a thing that I use quite frequently because of when quarantine started. My favorite beading site, which you probably can see the title if you can read my handwriting. I cannot tell because I can't see what I'm seeing right now. It started out, it was like they were closing down for 2 weeks and they're coming back so you could buy beads, but like then they slowly started to extend that more and more. And I had originally put all of these beads in my cart, and I was like, okay, when it gets closer to the time that they're going to be opening up again, I will just, I will have all these in my cart already so I can just hit buy, and then they'll ship out the day they open. That did not happen. But I had, I'd started with making these lists. Like, these are all of the first fringe earrings I bought. I have not made them all yet. But I was like trying to figure out what beads I needed for each ones, what ones I had, which ones I needed most, and then I created this list. I am using this list because most of these things are beads at the moment that I still need, not only for the fringe earrings, but and just in general. It's at the moment, I'm just using this for beads I want right now. While most people won't need or want to have this, I do highly recommend having a list of, like, keeping track, having a list of all the beads you have, all the beads you need, like if you're running low, so that when you get to a certain point you can buy those. I have a list of all of the beads that I have on my computer, but at the moment it's not a priority for me to write them all down and keep them in this notebook. But once I have time, I do plan to do that. Right now it's just, what beads do I need? I need all of these beads, which I recently just ordered all of these beads. So this note will change somewhat, because there are some on here that I need all the time, like eggshell and silverline gold and white. I actually have a lot of black at the moment because before the beading thing went away, I'd gotten 25 grams of it. But like ghost gray, I use a ton of. Chocolate, use a ton of. Those are ones that I'll always need. So some of this will change, some of it won't. Okay, the next two sections I have are on white paper, which to me, except for when it's organized, that signifies that they're temporary. And they are both connected to the third section, which I've mentioned before, which is my 2 bead section. I mentioned earlier that I'm doing a giant overhaul on my shop, redoing some things, beading and taking new pictures, and better organizing what I did to make patterns. So I went through all of the beads that I have in the shop and made 2 sections of lists. The first temporary section list is a list of every charm or earring that is in the shop right at this moment. Now, these have 2 columns of numbers that represent stock. They represent if I have the allotted amount in my head, so the numbers vary for each one. What I consider full stock for both my Etsy and my Amazon handmade store. Now, my Amazon handmade store doesn't have a lot yet, so this is also going to be for, I'm going to slowly put things up on there too. I tended to round and make things easier for myself. Some that say 1 might be over the amount that I have planned on the site, but the number is just a reference point for me to know that I need to make more. I only just, again, opened the Amazon handmade site, so there will almost always be a 1, because when I beaded them, I took Etsy into account. So, like, for instance, like the Hufflepuff tie. I recently got a bunch of orders for Hufflepuff ties. I like to keep roughly 10 of each Hogwarts house on hand at a time. Since I now have to split that amount up, it would be roughly 5 on Etsy, 5 on Amazon. I'm probably going to change that. But however, due to having a lot of people that want the Hufflepuff tie, I only have about 3 on hand right now. So I put that tie down as a 0 compared to its other ones because I only have 3 and not the full 5. Whereas if I had like 7, I would put a 1 so that I know I would need to make a couple more to make 10. The next temporary section, technically in my head, this next section is also called to bead, like the section behind it, but this one is only temporary, so I'm okay with calling it to bead. Usually I make a list of everything I plan to bead for an update in this notebook, and depending on the mood, I either write a list of like what I'm going to bead for the week or what I want entirely in my next update. But because I'm doing the shop overhaul, I did not want to use all of the tiny pages in the tiny notebook. So I did them on loose leaf paper. These are not just, this one, unlike this one, is not just things that are already in the shop, technically. There are new things as well, and the numbers work the same way as the last list. And so since I'm going through all my old listings, I'm also doing variations of those, and some of the patterns I have 2 variations of the pattern. I'm doing multiple variations of those. So for instance, if you look over here, I have a bunch of dragons. I have, I think, 3 different dragon patterns from Jane of Bead Crumbs Hawaii, who's probably the designer that I, have the most patterns of. While I did separate the teeny dragon, because in my head the teeny dragon is an entirely different entity, I combined the 2 other dragons because they are very close in size, very similar, and use almost the same amount of beads, which is why over here I have 4 next to them, though some of these should not have 4 next to them because I think I just got 4 happy, and just put 4 for all of them, but not all of them need 4. But I also just didn't want to write Dragon 1, this one, like this whole list, and then write it again, and then write it a 3rd time for another dragon. I have 6 pages of beadings that I want to bead before my next shop update, but however, if I don't make all of them, I will just I will still do my next shop update when I planned to do my next shop update, which is June 6th. But I will just, after that, I will still continue to do this list and only have like a couple official new ones up. Then. Now on to my actual organizing process. I know that was a lot of babbling, but most of you probably skipped it. But I like to explain my thought processes and make sure that I get in as much as I can, because I know from experience that if I don't mention things or forget the teeniest things, certain people will be upset. I can't please everyone, but I can try my hardest to do this to the best of my abilities. Now, say I find a pattern on Etsy that I like, or on another beading site, because I do get them on other sites. The first thing that I do once I have bought the pattern is print it out and add it to my 2-bead section right here. My 2-bead section is what I considered my queue for beading. Sometimes I move the order around, but generally I try to stick to this order. If I create a list like this one, I try and make sure that it's in this order so that I don't confuse myself. I don't have a set time or anything, but every few days I will sit down and take one of my Post-its, sorry, and I go through it and decide what, I take out my tray of beads, which I don't have with me at the moment. I sit down with the colors and decide what will work for which pattern, and depending on the amount of beads used in the pattern, I might opt for the bigger of the Post-its, because like for instance my hedgehog that's like on everything that I do, I think that uses like 8 or 9 different colors. I'd have to look at that one, but let's see, I'm trying not to show these things. Okay, so if you see right here, this pattern is one that I recently finished and haven't sorted yet. I have to transfer this over here. I have like 20 patterns behind this that are just like this. So I'll sit there and I will decide on the colors and I'll write them down on the Post-it and I'll stick it to the back of, like, sometimes I do 5, sometimes I do 10. It's what my mood feels like, so that when I get to bead them, I just look at the Post-it, bring out the beads, and it's just quicker for me. Back friend. This beading pattern is okay. I'm trying really I'm trying really hard not to show other beading patterns. It took me a while to figure out which one I was going to show, because a lot of designers get ripped off from their patterns. So it's easier to rip them off if you can see the pattern than, like, say, knitting pattern, which is mainly just words, because beading patterns are pictures. This beading pattern is different because I learned it from a video, and the lady literally held it up like this and was just like, take a screenshot so that you can make it yourself. I'm gonna hold it as steady as possible. So I wanted to make it so much because I love that video. I will link it down below. I learned so much from it, and I am trying a lot of her techniques in my fringe earrings now. And I also link her shop, but I think her shop is like, you know, on vacation or whatever, and I don't think she's gonna open it up again. But this is a pattern I've already finished. Once I have beaded a pattern, I get a loose leaf sheet of paper and I add it behind the pattern, and I transferred the bead information to it. I used to like hand write it onto the paper, but once my old binder got too stuffed, I decided to stop adding the loose leaf paper, and only just started adding them back since I am trying to do a ton of a ton of different charms and stuff. I don't want to take the time to hand write them out right now. Maybe when I bead them again, I will hand write them out, but at the moment it's just not a priority. But I like to have a separate paper after the pattern once I finish it, for multiple different reasons. One is that it separates the pattern in my mind. It separates one pattern from another, so you can differentiate. So, like, since I use loose leaf paper because it's different structure than printer paper, so it's easy to see. So if you're looking from like the side, you can. Right now I only have 2, so you can't tell. But in the other sections, I can kind of tell where there's loose leaf and where there isn't. And in my mind, it signifies like a separate facet to the beadwork. The pattern has its own page, and in my mind, the bead should too. But the main reason that I started adding the separate pages was for patterns like the dragons from before, where I have upwards of, I haven't actually beaded them yet, but I have upwards of 10 different variations that I want to try, and 10 regular size Post-its do not fit on the back of one page, and smaller Post-its I need double the amount to fit how many beads I need, and they basically take up the same amount of space. But then it's like, I have some patterns that I can't fit onto one of these 2 different sizes of Post-its, and it gets really confusing if you have multiple Post-its for one item. That's why I was hand writing them, is because then I can have them all. But at the moment, I don't have the time. So I like when it's just, all together, one Post-it. And in the past few days, I mentioned earlier, I have also been, doing an experiment with adding small photos. Those I'm only really adding to the ones I've already hand written out so that I know I have the space. I started out with a Polaroid camera that does really tiny ones, and the thing is though, I suck at taking Polaroid pictures. So I have been experimenting with other methods. I have not found a good affordable teeny photo printer that can print photos from like your phone. But I have I was cutting my planner stickers out one day and I realized I probably could use the same paper. But for that I need at least 18 to 20 photos that so that I feel like I'm not wasting my sticker paper, because I use it for both for labels for my business and my planner. It is working so far, but I've not perfected it yet, so I'm probably gonna wait until another time to do that. Or, well, not to do that, but to show everyone like what it looks like with the tiny little picture. But basically from the front of this, most of them are roughly the same size. And just imagine that up in this corner. Moving to inches. Alright. So you've probably noticed that I have been writing in pencil. I tend to either make mistakes or change things up when I want to write the final beads on loose leaf paper. I will do those in pen because I want them to last longer. However, with pages like this one, or again with the doggies, this one, which again I can't tell if you can see or not, I tend to make changes often to the order. For instance, I'm thinking of combining some of these dogs into like this terrier section. I have a whole terrier section, so I'm thinking of combining a couple of these dogs into one section, like the King Charles Spaniel and the Cocker Spaniel into one section. But I usually tend to add sections, newer ones under old ones. Like for instance, this one, the table of contents is not finalized because I can't I have now decided, but I just haven't had the chance to write it yet. But this one I started to put in alphabetical order, but it annoyed me because when I had to add new animals, I had to erase things and add them again. So it just got too much for me. So I decided to save time and save the headache and just put them how they are online, which is just to add a new one under the old one, and this one will get redone soon. Most of these don't have many sections at the moment because I have not added all of the stuff that I have online and that I have recently found in old flash drives. Those ones have not been added to my online organization, so they're not, either they're not included in here yet or they're not included online yet. Just depends. I love being able to flip through, and I wish I could flip through and show you my patterns, but I don't want to give anyone the chance to steal pattern. But I just love being able to flip through and see actual patterns of what I have. Some days I don't feel like beading what was on my very giant list. So on those days I'll take a flip through what I have in the binder or the to bead section, and I will just pick out something that interests me. Sometimes it being like in the past couple days I've done a couple that have been from my shop update one, but were lower on the list. And I'm thinking of doing one today that is definitely not on the list at all that I just gotten. So I'll just have to see. This binder has not only helped keep me organized, but helped me remember how I beaded something. if I knew how to find one of these that you couldn't see the pattern of, I totally would show you that. But it takes the stress off my mind that if I'm asked to bead something, I have the patterns somewhere physical and I have all the information about like what beads I use for that one. Specifically the hedgehogs. That's my #1 seller. I'm actually going to do a size 11 version. Usually I do size 15 beads, but that's my #1 bestseller, and I get asked to do those all the time for friends and stuff, and that takes one of these giant ones with a ton of different beads, and I'm like, I used to take pictures of them and keep them in my iPhoto, like an album in my iPhoto, and I just never was able to remember to put those into a separate folder, so they would just get stuck in my general photo section, and I have thousands and thousands of photos. I like photos. But this has helped me a lot. It's kept me on track. I've been more productive than I ever have been. My last update had 60 some items in like 2 weeks of beading because I usually have to take like half a week off because I usually overtire my hands. Like this last time, like specifically this earring, the set of them, I like to do pictures of just one and pictures of two, but my hand hurt so badly I could not hold my DSLR camera, and that when I was halfway through taking the pictures of these laying down, because I couldn't hang them up because my earring hanger is like 4 inches tall and this is 4 inches, so it was touching the ground. But it hurt so much I could not physically take a picture of the two together because my hand was just screaming and I was about to drop my camera. So I ended up taking those later, but by the time I'd edited those photos and was about to put them up, the earrings had sold. Well, they'd actually been sold days before. But yeah, just it is what it is. Well, everyone, this has been a requested flip through explanation, I don't know what, video of my beading organization binder. I am sorry, this has probably been a very long video. I have had to do this like 4 or 5 times. I've had to deal with lighting issues and being ill and not being able to see correctly, having family members walk in or talking nearby. Dropping things, lights falling on the floor. So this is probably going to be very chopped up and edited and somewhat confusing. I might have to do this a 5th time. But for all of you who stuck around to the very end, thank you. If you would please leave a like and subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful week. God bless.